day being quite the same in a routine. I've been keeping a routine for quite some time,
So
and you
you're saying it's
disappear.
similar
Oh,
or
you're
it's
back.
different things? Are you saying it's the same things or it's different things?
No, always the same thing.
Always the same
Always,
things.
yes, the same routine. I'm
Same
not working, so I'm always at home. I go out just to do some very important stuff
yes.
because of the quarantine.
Oh, right, of course. You're only allowed to go out to do very important things, but yes, I see what you mean. So it's limited. And what is the situation in your country? Are things becoming better, or are they stabilizing, or are they becoming worse? What's the situation like at the moment?
The situation is quite critic
Crit
or critical,
Critical, okay.
critical.
Critical is the way to describe a situation. So you would talk about a critical situation, whereas
Hmm.
a critic would be like
Oh,
a,
the
a
noun.
film critic. That's right. So a film critic would be a person who reviews films, who says if they're good or bad, you see.
Hmm.
So that's the
Hmm.
difference. So you're
Okay.
saying it's critical. Critical in what way? What's making it critical, Sil?
It's that mainly because many people aren't taking this seriously.
Mm,
Starting with
yes.
our president.
Really?
He, yes.
Oh
Think
no.
of a poor version of Donald Trump. He's here. He's our
Oh, that's
president.
terrible. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry to hear that,
We
Sil.
are too.
Oh
We are too.
no.
And it makes the country really divided because, on one
Oh,
hand, he
yes.
is close to the Christian groups.
Oh, that's nice. He's a
Um,
Christian. Wow.
it is nice.
Really?
But
Yes.
on the other hand, he is a very ignorant man.
Oh,
He's the type of a person who who boasts
boasts.
in
So
in
third person singular,
boasts.
you have to add the S on the end. So
Okay,
he boasts,
person who boasts
right? Yes.
about a knowledge that he doesn't have. So
Really?
what I mean,
Wow.
he's a, yes,
That's
I mean,
amazing.
he's not a doctor, he's not a
Yeah.
doctor, but
No.
he is talking. He has been talking on TV, on public, no public.
Public.
How do I
The
say
letter
when he
U. Public. Yes.
public statements? How do I
Yes.
call when a president address to the nation?
A public address.
A public address.
Public.
Um,
Public.
public,
That,
public,
that's
public
right.
address to
Yes.
the country, saying that
Hmm.
this coronavirus is
Yes.
only a little flu.
Oh,
It's not
no.
that it's not such a big deal. And
Oh,
then he won't use the mask.
oh
He meets
no.
he meets with population. How do
The
I call? I mean,
population. You don't
the
say he meets with population. You need to have the article in front of the noun. In this case,
the
the definite article. So he meets with the population, like that.
okay. That's
Hmm.
wonderful that you stopped me
Of
to say this
course,
because I know
absolutely.
this
So
and I didn't notice
yes.
that I didn't use the. When I repeat
Uh-huh.
the same sentence just in my mind, I think,
Yes.
how can someone say meet population? Meet the population.
That's right. But sometimes when we're speaking, because it's happening so fast, even though we know how we should say it, we sometimes, by lack of attention or just the fact it's going so fast, we
Yes,
sometimes skip a word and don't say it, especially if in
yes.
your own native mother tongue language you're not used to saying it because I think you have less articles in Portuguese than you have in English. And that is
Mhm.
why sometimes, without realizing it, you're saying it in the Portuguese way. And when you're speaking quite quickly, then obviously that can happen. Now, one way, of course, to avoid those kinds of mistakes of lack of attention, because it's not like you don't know what it is. You do know what it should be. But if you were to speak maybe a little bit more slowly and
I'll
think
try this.
about what you're saying before you actually
Try
say it, you see what I mean? And that
this.
way, I'm sure you will make
Mhm.
less mistakes and your English
Mhm.
will be so much better. So that's what I
Thanks for the tip.
recommend. You're
I'll try this.
welcome.
I'll try this. And
Absolutely. You're
when I make
welcome. So,
more mistakes, is for example, right
yes.
now,
Hmm.
I'm interested in telling you about
Mm.
my country situation, and I'm interested in let you
Did you
know
say my
how.
country situation or my country's apostrophe S
No,
situation?
I didn't say country situation.
Because it's a situation of my country.
Country.
So you
Country.
need to have the apostrophe S, which is the same thing as saying the situation of my country, because the apostrophe S replaces the word of, but you need to pronounce that S or the
Uh-huh.
apostrophe S, which is after the noun. So you need to say, my country's
Uh-huh.
situation. That's how you should
My
say it.
country
Yes,
situation. Let
that's
me
right.
just ask a question. I have a
Ask.
question on this matter. Ask
Yes.
a question. I have a
Not of,
question on
not
this
of
matter.
on this matter. Yes, you cannot say of this matter, but you can say on this matter or about this matter. Usually
On
people have a question about something. So
about
it's, yes, that's the
I
usual way of saying it. So I have
I
a question about
I
this
really
matter.
have a question about this matter.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it is about pronunciation. When I have
Pronunciation.
S but pronounce
Pronunciation.
pronunciation
It's it's
pronunciation.
not the same as the verb to pronounce because
Mm-hmm.
uh, there in with the verb you have an extra o between the two ends. You see, but in pronunciation you only have the u between the first two ends and no o. So it's none
Pronoun
instead of noun. So it's pronunciation instead of the
pronunciation
verb right. Instead of the verb to
pronunciation.
pronounce. You see, the verb is to pronounce, and the
Uh-huh.
noun is pronunciation.
Okay. Pronunciation of the
Very
S
good.
after our word begin ending with S. For example, Ross, the name. Ross' sister, Ross's sister. Is that how I should
Absolutely.
pronounce?
That is
Ross,
exactly
Ross,
right. Ross's sister. That is correct.
Ross's.
But the way you write it is optional, you see. You can either
Mm,
write it with the S after the apostrophe or without the S after the apostrophe. So you have a choice. You're
mm-hmm.
free to choose. Both are correct. Either with
All
the
right.
S after the apostrophe or without the S. But you still need to pronounce it, even if you don't write it, you see? So it's always
Okay.
Ross's sister. Whether
Uh-huh.
you write it or not, you still need to pronounce that
Oh,
S after the apostrophe.
that's good to know. I didn't know that. So back to
Ah,
my president.
yes, back to
Uh,
your president. Tell me about your president. So,
uh, he recently
yeah,
he
yeah.
met with the population with his how do I call the people who like the president who has people who have
The
alliance with him. How,
fans? Are they the fans? The fan club? They're the
yes, but
fans of the
yeah,
president?
yes, yes. But fans?
Oh
Should I call
no,
them fans?
I'm giving them more, let's say, funny word to describe them.
Uh-huh.
But we talk about Donald Trump's fans. He does have a big fan club, actually.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yes.
I would say the word sympathizers. Have you
Sympathizers.
heard of
Good.
that word before? Sympathizers.
Wonderful. We
Because
have sympathizantes.
that's right, they sympathize with him, so they would be called sympathizers.
So, do I need to use apostrophe in this sentence? Listen, the president's sympathizers went to
Yes,
meet
that's
him.
right. Yes, the
Right.
president's sympathizers went to meet him.
Uh-huh.
President's
Okay.
sympathizers went to meet him. That's correct. Yes, absolutely. Hmm.
You see that I have a hard time using the apostrophe S.
It's not always easy. You're not the only one. That's something that a lot of my English students have difficulty with. So that can reassure you somewhere. You're in good company. You're not the only one. So it's
Okay.
a common
And
mistake. So
then he went to he went closer to them,
closer,
and
not closer. Be
closer.
careful. Closer. You see the difference between
Uh-huh. Closer. Uh-huh. I
closer
know, I know,
and the verb to close.
I
The
know,
verb
I
to
know.
close is
He
like a
went
z and
closer.
closer. It's like a his sound. Yes. Mm,
Okay. He
closer.
went closer to them
Hmm.
and shake their hand and
Shook. Shook.
shook
He
in the past,
shook.
and
That's
shook
right.
their hands
Yes.
and how do I say hugged in the
Hugged
past,
them.
right? And
He
hugged,
hugged them. He hugged them.
hugged. But I want to say the kiss.
All of this without a mask, without
Yes,
gloves,
yes.
without
And
protective
he
clothing.
wanted,
Oh
got it.
no.
And he wanted to
Oh,
make a point to show the nation.
ah,
Look at me. We don't need this. Look what I'm
ah,
doing. I'm
that
very
is
disappointed.
irresponsible. Yes,
And
that is
listen,
very irresponsible. That's really careless.
and look
That's
what is
really
important about
negligence.
this.
Yes,
Negligent.
that's right.
Negligent. He's a negligent. He's being
Yes.
negligent. But
Mm,
look what is even worse. The Christian
yes.
people here who who supported him at the beginning,
Yes. Uh-huh.
those who have a how can I say this? A thinking, critical thinking.
Yes.
Uh, as me, how do I say when we stop following someone, we abandon him? Abandon, is that a better word?
You can say either abandoned him or we dropped him. Have you heard the
Drop.
expression to drop
Yes, I
somebody?
like
That
it.
means you just abandon them by dropping them. So that would be the more usual way of saying it.
I
They
prefer.
just
I
dropped
like.
him. Yeah.
We dropped
Hmm.
him,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
sadly,
Hmm.
most Christians uh, stick to him. Stick. Can I say this? Stick to him
Ah,
in the
yes,
past.
that's right. They
Look,
adhere to him because glue sticks and it's also used to adhere. So they uh, adhere to him. Have you heard of that word adhere, which
I have seen, but I
comes
don't know
from the
what it
noun?
means.
That's the verb, and then there's adhesion. Have you heard of adhesion?
Uh-huh. These should come
It
together.
means sticking. That's right. Come together and sticking together. It's a synonym. It means the same thing as sticking. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Hmm. Yes.
And what's the
Yes.
past of stick?
Stuck. He's stuck.
Stop.
Yes. Oops,
Stop.
sorry. I wrote that a bit too quickly. But
Oh,
he's stuck. There we go. Let me just correct that. That's Stuck. He's stuck.
most of my Christian friends stuck to him despite
Yes.
his you said the word lacking when you lack
Negligence.
precaution, negligence,
Negligence.
despite
Yes.
his negligence. And
We would,
now
if it's
we
great
have
negligence, we talk about gross negligence. Have you ever heard of
Oh,
gross negligence? When it's
really? I know.
gross, it's excessive and extreme negligence. It's
Oh,
gross negligence.
it's the same word that we use when we want to call something disgusting.
Really disgusting. That's right. It's gross. It's in that sense. But here we're using the word gross a bit like you would have the word a grocer. And uh, you know how much is a gross? A
No.
gross is means a wholesale seller, because in French
Mm.
we say un grossiste, because gros in French is big, and so uh, un grossiste is a wholesale seller. Grocer also buys things in large amounts. So
Mhm.
um, a gross is, let's just remind myself how many it is. Yes, 144. That's right.
Mm.
So a gross is 144. That's the amount that it is. And so it's using the imperial measurement system rather than the metric system. You know, in the UK, they have the empirical system, like they have ounces and pounds and stones, and they have inches, feet, and yards and miles, you see. So it's the
Mhm.
imperial system. And so a gross, the amount is 144. That is a gross. Did you know that,
Mhm.
Sil? Did you know that?
I do.
You
So,
did know that.
so we're
Oh, that's
telling you.
good. That's good.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
And so, in this case, gross is used to indicate a big amount.
Yes, that's right. It's
Mm.
indicating that it's a very large amount. So it means it's a very
Uh,
great negligence, like extreme negligence.
I knew this number, but I didn't
You
know how to use
did.
it.
You didn't know how to
No,
use
I mean
it. This
not
is
by
how you
heart,
would.
not by heart. I didn't know by heart.
Yes.
I knew there was
Yes.
some
Hmm.
measurement. Uh,
Yes, that's
so
right. It is a unit of measurement. I mean, yes. Hmm.
people stuck to him
Yes.
despite of his gross,
Mm.
gross. I forgot the
Yes.
word. Gross negligence,
Negligence.
negligence,
But if you look in the
negligence.
Skype chat, you'll see it because I've written all of these things in the
I
Skype
know. Yeah,
chat.
I remember, but it's because
Yes.
I'm not good at
Uh-huh.
this. Okay, and then among
Mhm.
us Christians,
Yes.
we found ourselves
Uh-huh.
um, disagreeing with one another because, for example, I feel really sad when I see a friend of
Yes.
mine
Yes.
sharing this type of message in their Facebook page, Instagram, whatever. And on the other
Yes.
hand, they 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 despise, no, not despise, they disagree,
Despise. Disagree.
despise.
Yes.
I mean, they don't
To
like. So
despise is different from disagreeing, because disagreeing doesn't give the sense of disliking. You can disagree,
dislike.
that means you don't agree, but you don't necessarily express dislike. But when you
I think
despise,
despise
that
is
means
too
you
strong.
dislike very strongly. It's a very strong
Mhm.
dislike when you despise, which is not the same as disagreeing. Disagreeing, saying,
No,
okay, I accept what you're saying,
I
but I
prefer.
don't agree with it. And some people agree to
I prefer.
disagree. Have you heard that expression?
I,
We
I have. They
let's just agree
I
to disagree. You know?
I prefer disagree then. So they
Yeah.
disagree of me of. They
I
disagree of me.
I think you're mixing disagree with disapprove. Have you heard of to
Approve. Disapprove.
disapprove of someone? I think you
Yes.
mean to disapprove of someone. That means you don't approve of them, which it isn't
Good.
quite the same as to agree or disagree. Agree or disagree just means you're thinking the same way. To
Uh-huh.
disapprove means not only do you not think the same way, but you consider in a negative way what the other person is
Inappropriate.
saying or thinking.
Uh-huh.
That's
I
right. You
see.
think it's
So
inappropriate, so you
actually,
disapprove.
they disapprove. They disapprove what I say because they disagree with me.
You don't disapprove what you say. They
Mm.
disapprove of what you say. You always disapprove of something. So,
Of
um,
disapprove
so
of my position. How there's a way how to say it. When I stand, when I take stand.
take position or take a stand. Yes,
Help me out. How to
you
say
can
this?
take a stand. It's like saying you can take a position on something. You see, you take a stand on something, you take a position on something. Yes, and there's
But
also the
help me to
expression.
say
Yeah.
what
Hmm.
help me to say that they disapprove when
Yes.
I take off, they disapprove of my taking a stand. How do
You
I
can
put those two things
stance.
together?
Okay. They disapproved. Um, disapproved. Disapproved of my stance. Have you ever heard of
My
the word
stand.
stance before?
No, no,
Stance. Stance.
no.
Well, stance is the same word. It's a synonym. It means when you're taking a stand, that is your
Uh-huh,
stance. When you've
uh-huh.
taken a position, that is your stance. So, in fact, it's summarizing the expression take a stand or take a position. Once you've done that, that is then your stance. So,
I
it's easier
I
to
got it.
use the word stance because it's one word which replaces three words. Instead of saying
Uh-huh,
take a position or take a stand, you just say,
uh-huh.
this is my stance. That is to say, it's the position I've
And
taken or the stand I've
I
taken.
I see.
Yes.
And this is
Yes.
very negative because it
Mm.
influences. Oh, influences. I said
In,
it with the S at
inf-
the end.
yes, you said it very well. Influences. Influences. Very
Uh,
good. Well
our
done,
uh,
Sil.
friends, the relationship
Yes.
between among friends, because
Among.
I among
Among. Yes, it's pronounced like the
among
letter
friends
U instead of the letter O. Among. That's right.
among friends,
Yes.
because I don't admire some of my friends the way I used to, and I'm pretty
Mm.
sure some of them don't have the same thinking or the same, help me out, they don't have the same, I don't want to say admiration, I don't want to use the word admiration, I'm going to use so
Mhm.
that you know what I want. They don't have the
Yes.
same admiration for me. How can I say this?
Admiration, you mean? You say
Yes,
what?
I mean,
Well,
they don't have the same good things about me that they had before, because they think I dropped their
mm,
presidents together
yes.
with their Christian philosophy. So they think
Yes.
as if I'm not the same person that they thought I
Mm,
was. How did I lose? I lose their admiration. How can I say this?
yes. But one way that you could say that you don't have the same approach or attitude, it's they don't have the same mindset as I have, because a
Mindset.
mindset
I'm
is the
looking.
way of thinking. So if you don't have the same
Mindset.
way of thinking as they have, and they don't have the same way of thinking as you have, then you both have a different mindset. Have you heard of that expression before, Sil? A mindset, having the same mindset or
No, and
not?
I just checked here and I
It
hadn't seen
it's
before.
it's
Mindset.
it's a good expression. It's a good way of
Very good.
expressing it because it's the way people think. You see, it's the mindset.
And
It
and I
literally it's how their mind is set. Yes, yes.
and
Hmm.
then I wanted to I'm going to use this word because today I want to talk
Oh
to
yes.
you about the book of First Corinthians. And one of the
Oh
topic
yes.
Paul
Hmm.
addresses is about them. there,
Mm-hmm.
the Corinthians, not having
Corinthians.
the same
Oh,
mindset.
yes. Right. That's right. You know, we're called to have the mind of Christ. We're called to have the
Exactly.
mindset of Christ, to have the thoughts of
The
Christ,
mindset.
you see. And
Uh-huh.
so, obviously, if these people, like the Corinthians, they don't have the same mindset, then it's contradictory. You see, it's conflictual. It leads to conflicts and disagreements. So it tends to be a negative thing. It tends to be a bad thing when that
Does,
happens.
does. So,
Yeah.
could we go to the book of Corinthians
Mm.
to discuss it?
Yes, of course. So, which Bible version are you using,
NIV, always
Sil?
NIV.
Okay, NIV. NIV UK? You know there's an
No,
NIV
no.
UK
I,
version.
I,
No, just the ordinary
you
NIV, the American version.
you
Okay.
sent me last class, but
Yes.
I'm keeping. I've been study
Mm.
and taking notes on my
Ah,
NIV
right.
American version
That's okay.
since Genesis.
Okay. That's okay.
So I'm working on this.
That's fine. That's
And,
absolutely fine. So it's in the book of
okay,
Corinthians, the first epistle to the Corinthians, 1
the
Corinthians.
first episode. Well, yeah, in English, you guys say one, two. You don't you say first, second?
No, we tend to say 1, 2, like 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians instead of First Corinthians, Second Corinthians. Of course, if we say the whole expression, like the first letter or epistle to the
Uh-huh.
Corinthians, then we use the word first. But if we don't use the
Uh-huh.
whole expression, we just read it as it looks. We see the number 1, we say 1. We see Corinthians, we
I
say
noticed that.
1 Corinthians. You noticed that? Oh, very
I
observant
was
still.
watching.
Very
No,
good. I'm
because I
impressed.
was watching or
Ah,
reading something about this
mm,
in English, and I
yeah.
saw this one. I said, "What?"
That's very observant of you. That's good that you noticed that. Excellent. So, which chapter is it in the first epistle to the Corinthians, Sil?
I'd like to. Okay, I'd
Mm.
like to make an overview of the book
Oh, a whole overview of the whole book of Corinth of the first, yes, epistle to the Corinthians. Okay.
as far
Yes.
as we manage to get to reach.
Yes, of course, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And um, in my church,
Mm-hmm.
there's a group, a
A cell group, house
cell
church, small group, prayer group, Bible group.
cell group
Yes, that's
in
right, cell group.
which they study the Bible in English. There are some
Mm-hmm.
foreigners in this group and also
Mm-hmm.
Brazilians who, of course, speak English. And
Right.
I intend in the future, next year, I don't know when,
Mm-hmm.
someday, to take part in this group. And I wanted to be
Yes.
able to
Uh-huh.
to make an exposition
Oh,
of
that's
a
good.
biblical text in a
Yes.
good English. So I want you to help me out in
In
this
this way.
direction,
Normally we would
in this
say in this way. That's the
in
usual
this
way of
way.
saying it. Yes, in this way. Mm-hmm.
For starters, how can I was trying to do this myself here, and just to start, I had some barrier. I didn't know how to say this properly. So, for example, how
Mm-hmm.
do I say today's exposition is on for and
Mm.
okay. I say First Corinthians.
Yes, if you prefer, instead of saying 1 Corinthians, if you'd rather say First Corinthians, that's fine. I know what you mean anyway. I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
That's right.
So you see okay. So today's exposition is on First Corinthians. Is that
Right.
okay? Right?
Um, yes, I mean, basically you're sharing. So you could talk about like saying today I'll be sharing on
Mm-hmm.
First Corinthians, okay, or
Sharing.
sharing about
Sharing.
First
Mm-hmm.
Corinthians, and that's
Mm-hmm.
a quite usual way of saying it. You see, so you could say today's presentation, because after all,
Today's
an exposition is a presentation. So you could say today's presentation is on or about First Corinthians. So you
Mm-hmm.
could talk about today's presentation. I mean, that's a good way of saying it as well. Hmm.
Okay. So before I go to the letter itself, I
Hmm.
wanted to give to say a quick, okay, quick
Hmm.
words on when
A,
about or
a
on
quick word or plural quick words?
quick words. Oh,
Ah, so
I mean
if it's plural,
words.
then you don't put a in front. You just say, I would like to say quick words. But if it's singular, then it's a quick, but then you can't put words in the plural. Then it becomes a
Oh,
quick word. So you have to choose whether it's all singular or all plural.
sure, sure.
That's right.
So I'd like to say quick words on the
Yes.
time he had lived there,
Left,
because
left there because it's in the past.
lived
Not
lived there.
lived. Oh, I thought you said leaved, as though, the verb to leave. No, you mean to live, Live. So it's the verb to live. The time that he
Live.
lived
Yes,
there. That's right.
lived.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Lived. Okay.
Um, and Paul stayed a year and a half there.
Wow, that's good.
Um, yes, and he met there. He was before he arrived there. He was
Hmm.
in Athens,
Right.
and he wasn't very well received, very welcomed there.
Yes. Hmm.
Then he, can I say set off? He set off
Yes, of
to Cor-
course.
Corinth.
Corinth. Yes, that's
Corinth.
right. Hmm.
There in Corinth, he
Hmm.
met a couple, Priscilla and Aquila. I don't
Oh,
know how to
yes.
say this,
Yes.
them.
So Aquila and Priscilla. Priscilla and
Aquila.
Aquila. Yes.
Priscilla,
Yes, that's right.
Aquila.
Priscilla. Yeah.
And he stayed with them because
Mm.
they were tent makers.
That's right. Same as
Like,
him. Like him. That's right. He was also a tent maker.
yeah,
That's it. Yeah,
it's
they had the
so
same
good.
job.
It's so good
Yes.
that I know that you know the story. You know what I'm talking
Yes.
about.
Yes, of course. Absolutely. Hmm.
And then he first went to the Jews, as he
Right.
would always do when
Mm.
he first arrived in a city.
Mm-hmm.
He would go first to the Jews, to the synagogues, to preach the
Right.
gospel.
That's right.
And often he would be, now I want to talk about a huge dislike, when people
Yes.
dislike someone a lot. How what word can I use?
Well, of course, if you hate somebody, the verb to hate, that is to dislike very strongly. So you could use the word, the verb to hate. So they could say, you could say the people hated him. But
Hate.
maybe that's a little bit too strong. I don't know. You could say
That's
once
very
again
strong.
they disapproved of him, or they rejected him, or they resented him.
Rejected.
Rejected.
Resent.
Yes,
Resent. Resent
that's
is
right.
good.
They
Although,
rejected or they resented. So those are words which are probably more appropriate than just saying they hated him. Yes, they
eh,
rejected him and they resented him. I think that's,
I like the
better.
other two,
Yes.
because hey, it's quite beginners vocabulary.
That's
It's
right.
okay.
It's very
That's
general,
all.
but when you're talking about reject, it's more specific, you see.
Uh-huh.
It's explaining the reason why they hated him. Uh,
Oh,
you see, the reason why they disliked him is because they rejected him, they rejected what he
uh-huh.
was saying. So
Because
it shows that they were
Jews,
against him. That's right, for a certain reason. So it's more specific and it's more appropriate because hating is very general and it doesn't really indicate the reason why the person,
Uh-huh.
hates.
Yeah, I see.
Mhm.
They can hate someone for various
Various
reasons.
reasons, that's right. But when you reject
Uh-huh.
somebody, it's for a specific reason. It's because you don't want to have anything to do with that person, because you don't like the way they
And
speak,
some
what they say.
people hate some people hate others, and
Mm-hmm.
they can't even explain why they
Oh,
hate
yes.
that person.
Sometimes there's just because they're in a bad mood, they've had a bad day,
Mhm.
and they decide they're going to
Yes,
hate everybody.
yes,
Uh,
yes.
that's just general hate. But here it's more
Mhm.
specific. They actually rejected him, and normally when you reject somebody, it's because consciously um, you are against the person. So it's more specific than just general hate.
Okay. And then people rejected him,
Mhm.
and he stopped preaching in the synagogue
Mhm.
and moved on to preach to the Gentiles.
Right, that's right. That's why he was
Right?
called the apostle to the Gentiles. Absolutely. Hmm.
Yes. And even though he wasn't there close to the Jews, they kept an eye on him.
Of course,
Uh,
yes.
and after a while, I don't know
Hmm.
how, the Bible doesn't say how,
Hmm.
but they managed to to capture him
Yes.
and take him to court.
Hmm. Yes.
Um, so the judge
Hmm.
refused to judge their case
Right.
because it was a religious matter,
Not
and he
not not
said,
religion matter, because religion is a noun, matter is a noun, and
"Oh,
instead of having two nouns together, it's better to have an adjective describing the noun. So it's better to talk about it as being a
just
uh,
religious,
religious
religious."
matter. Instead of a religion matter, it's better to talk about it as being a religious matter,
Okay,
because
can I
it's
use
best to avoid
issue
having
here
two
too?
noun issue. Sure, a religious issue,
Religious
that's fine.
issue.
Issue is
Mhm.
good, yes. Excellent.
But
Hmm.
then, a little while later, he
You don't
left the
say
city.
you don't say little while later. You would always say a little while
Hey,
later. So you always need the indefinite article here. Still, a little
a
while
little,
later.
a little while later. A
Yes, you
little
cannot
while
say
later.
you can't say little while later. You always have to say a little while later with the letter A in front. Yes. Hmm.
Okay, okay, got it. So a little while later, he set
Hmm.
off to Ephesians, and he finished his mission in
Hmm.
Corinthian so far,
Yes.
because
Hmm.
after he would send a couple of letters to them.
Yes, that's right.
And
Exactly.
this
Hmm.
letter I studied during the
Right.
week was the
Hmm.
first letter. It's what we know as the
Hmm.
first letter. Some scholars say that there were other two letters, but
Hmm.
I don't really care about them, because if something wasn't written in the
Hmm.
Bible, if the Holy Spirit didn't bring them to the Bible, I don't want
Yes.
to spend time, studying them. I'm gonna focus
Hmm.
on what is here. And
Of course. Hmm.
Paul received. He was probably in Ephesus, when
Yes.
he received the visit of
Hmm.
some people from Corinth. Corinth. Help me out. How do I
Corinth.
pronounce this?
Corinth.
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 Yes, like that. Corinth. Hmm.
And they told Paul, they made a report to Paul about the problems they were having in Corinth. And
Yes.
then Paul writes this letter in response
Mm-hmm.
to these problems they were having,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Um, so Paul begins this letter as usual, being complimentary,
Right.
complimentary,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm. It's
He
good you
he
remember the
says,
expression complimentary
I
that I used.
do. You know,
You
I
like
love
that?
when you teach me something new. I try
Yeah.
to use them
That's good.
later.
That's excellent. So it becomes part of your active vocabulary instead of only remaining in your passive vocabulary. That's very important.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then he starts by making compliments, and
Mm.
then I want to ask you about one question, one word. He
Yes.
says, my brother, some from close household have informed me there are quarrels among you. I want to know about the word quarrel because in the Bible, I've been seeing this word quite often, but
Hmm.
only in the Bible. What can
So,
you tell me
so
about this quarrel?
quarrel, Quarrel, like that. Quarrel. Well, a quarrel is like a dispute or an argument. Uh, so when people are quarreling, they're arguing, they're having a dispute amongst themselves. So it means they don't agree about something, and instead of agreeing to disagree, they're going
Mm-hmm.
to, have a verbal exchange. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
quite heated. It can be quite a
Uh-huh.
heated verbal exchange, and it can be sometimes very, very, um, let's say,
And if these words,
aggressive. It can be aggressive in a quarrel.
I
You,
got it.
you can be really upset sometimes, and some people shout and everything when they're
If
upset.
these
Yes, quarrel.
words
Yes.
common use out of these religions
Oh,
um,
yes. You can have it in everyday
vocabulary.
English as well. You can say those people are quarreling with each other. And, or, oh, over there's a quarrel going on at the moment between
Mm-hmm.
two people.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, the word quarrel is an ordinary word in everyday English,
Mm-hmm.
which is used
Mm-hmm.
outside the Bible, absolutely. It
Okay.
isn't limited to the Bible. It doesn't have specific
Okay.
Bible. It's not specific Bible jargon or
Okay.
terminology.
I got it.
Yes. Okay, that's good.
And Paul was telling them that in the letter he
Yes.
says that he knew that they they were having
Hmm.
division among
Yes.
them because
Yes.
some brothers were saying that they would follow they were Apollo's followers and others
Followers.
that
That's right.
they were Paul's followers and finally a group saying that they were
Ah, yes, I
Christ.
remember that. Yes.
Do you
Absolutely.
Christ's
Yes.
followers? And
Hmm.
then Paul warned them not to do so,
That's right.
because
Yes.
neither Paul
Not neither.
nor
Neither.
neither
Yes, because neither
neither
is
Paul.
the American English pronunciation, but the British say neither nor, and when it's positive instead of negative, it would be either
Either nor
or.
or either or.
That's right.
But let
Either.
me ask you something. Don't you
Yes.
think that I already pronounce almost everything in the American English?
Yes. I've noticed that a lot of your pronunciation is the American English. But I mean, if you want to pronounce it in the British English way, that is possible. You just need to remember which words are different because it's not all the words that are different. It's just certain
Mhm.
words that are pronounced differently. And if you remember what those words are, then whether you're talking to Americans or British people, you can just adapt your pronunciation to whatever group of people you are talking to, if you see what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Sil.
What I mean, I know what you
Mm.
mean. There are a couple of
Yes.
words, not many. I know
Yes, not all that
that.
many.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Hmm.
so neither Apollos nor Paul
Yes.
have or has the neither one nor the other have or has.
Because we're talking about the past, so it's had. Have would be in the
Uh,
present. If
yes,
they were with us right now, you would say neither of them have. But as we're talking about
yes,
what
yes,
happened in the
yes.
past, we
You're
would say
right.
had,
Absolutely,
because had is the
absolutely.
past participle of the verb to have.
Neither of them had died for the humanity, so
Mhm.
they shouldn't feel divided, but they should
Hmm.
all be Christ's followers.
That's right.
Uh, and
Exactly.
then he goes on to talk about
How did you express that word followers? What did you say just before the word followers, Sil?
Christ's followers.
No, it's Christ's followers, not
Christ's.
Christ's, because here it's not like Ross is, because Christ doesn't end with an S, then
I
it's
know.
just one S instead of two S's. So it would be
Christ.
Christ's followers. You see the
Christ's
difference?
followers.
That's right.
I have
Christ's
this tendency.
followers. Hmm.
I have this tendency of learning something and then apply to everything. And yes, I need to
Mm.
think better.
Yes.
Uh,
I see what you mean. You just need to remember if it's ending with an S when
mhm,
it's in the normal
mhm,
word, normally, or it's
yes,
not ending with an S. And when it's ending with
yes.
an S, then it's like Ross's. But if
Uh-huh.
it's Christ, it's just
Christ.
Christ's, and that's it. Yes,
Christ's
Christ's.
followers.
That's right. Christ's followers.
Then he moves on to talk about, let me see, when I came to you, brothers, eloquence. About
Mm.
the wisdom of the
Yes.
word in contrast with the wisdom from heaven.
Yes.
And he reminds them that when he was there in
Yes.
Corinth preaching the gospel, he
Correct.
wasn't there
Yes.
talking with
Mm.
a human wisdom, but in the power, he was preaching
Yes.
in the power of God. Let me
Right.
see what
That's it.
my message in my persuasive words. He was not using persuasive, no, persuasive
Persuasive.
words.
Persuasive.
Persuasive,
Yes.
persuasive.
Persuasive.
Words. You
That's it.
see.
Very good.
Now I want to hear you about one vocabulary here. He says, by the
Mm.
grace, by the grace God has given me, I laid
Hmm.
a foundation as an expert
Yes.
builder and
Hmm.
and and, and stuff. But I want you to help me to explain how to use lay. I understand the meaning. I understood the meaning of the verse, but I
Yes.
would like to be able to use this lay. I laid a foundation as an expert builder, and then after he says, "For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid."
Right. Laid is the past participle of the verb to lay. So it's the verb to lay when it's the infinitive. And then you could say with a simple perfect, I laid, um, or if it's with the verb to have, when it's the ordinary perfect, it was laid, or he has laid it. So it's to lay and then laid. So that would be
Mm-hmm.
the way to say it. So, laid is just the past participle of the verb to lay. You see.
I see, but I mean, what does it mean? How can I put this in my speech? Because lay
Um,
for me is like when I lay down in my bed to to lay. There are so many uses of these words. I'm not sure how to use it.
mhm. So, mm, yes. Okay. Well, now to explain this better to you, we do actually have the rules about whether to use the verb to lie or to lay. Now, obviously, when you're talking about an egg, I mean a chicken lays eggs. Okay.
Mm, mm,
Um, but when we lie down, that is to say,
mhm,
um,
mhm,
we are the verb to lie down. And in
mhm.
fact, to understand it better, I have here, I'm just trying to open it up so that I can send you the link to it. There we are. To set. Yes, it's all a question of whether you're setting an object down or whether you yourself are reclining or resting. But don't forget there's the verb to lie, which means to be dishonest and to say something
Mhm.
which isn't true. Um,
Okay.
so I think the best way would be for me to send you
Mhm.
this. Let me just send this to you.
Okay.
I have the link here. There we are. And I'll put it in the Skype chat. And you tell me what you think, if this helps you.
Okay.
If you click on the link, have a look at the link and see if this helps you.
Mhm.
Does this
I
help
just
you at all?
no, I clicked, but it didn't open. Let me see
It didn't.
here. I'm gonna try another way.
It didn't
No, it's
open.
not nothing wrong with your link. It's about my
Ah,
gadgets.
okay.
Um, okay, it's taking some time. So,
Mm,
I'm gonna suggest something. I'll take a look.
yes.
I mean, on my own, with some more time. And then
Yes.
next class, we can start. I'll bring some phrases, some sentences, because
Uh-huh.
this is very tricky. I have read
Yes.
about these over and over, and I never remember then when I
Mm,
need when I go back to it. So can I have
yes.
this as a homework?
Yes, absolutely. That would be very good homework for you to have a look at
Okay.
that. And I've sent you another link which also explains the same kind of thing with the different tense, present tense, past tense, present participle, and past participle. And so that will help you also understand the differences between these different forms of the verb to lay and to lie. So the main thing to remember is when it's to lay, it's when you're setting an object down. You're putting something down or placing something like laying a foundation. To lie is when you yourself are lying down. Okay.
Hmm.
So the past tense of when you're laying something down or putting something down, then it's laid. But when you yourself um, have rested or you've reclined on a bed, for example, you would say lay. That means I lay down.
I
Instead
lay
of I
down.
laid the
Lay
foundation, if it was
down.
yourself, you would say I lay down. Then
Hmm.
laying. is the present participle with ing when it's putting something down or laying a foundation. Whereas if you yourself are resting, you would say, I am lying down. So the difference between
Mhm.
laying and lying when it's a present participle. And when it's a past participle, it's laid, as we were saying, when
Late.
when a foundation has been laid, okay,
Mhm.
L-A-I-D, it has been set in
Mhm.
place. But if you yourself have rested, that means you have reclined on a bed,
Mhm.
then you would say, I have lain on the bed.
Oh,
You wouldn't say
lane.
I have
Oh,
laid on the bed. You would say I have
oh,
lain on the bed because lain is the past participle of the verb to lie when you
uh-huh.
yourself are resting on a bed. Then you would say,
Uh-huh.
um,
Oh,
uh, I have lain on the bed.
let me ask you a last question. I'm gonna check
Yes, of
this
course.
more carefully. Uh,
Yes.
number here he says, so
Mm-hmm.
then men ought to regard us as servants. I understand. I checked the word regard. I know regardless. I know in regard to, but in this with this meaning, men
Yes.
ought to regard us as servants of Christ. First
Mm-hmm.
question: is this a common? It's a common word using in daily English, and how could you give me another sentence with this regard?
So, can you just say that again, please,
Mm-hmm.
Sil? Just repeat
Hold
that again.
fast.
I've sent you a third link, by the way, which is
Mm-hmm.
a very detailed link. So you'll have a lot of information in the
Mm-hmm.
third link that I sent you. So if you could
Okay.
just repeat what you said a moment ago,
So
please.
then men ought to regard us as servants of Christ and as those entrusted with the secret things of God. The word
Yes.
regard.
Can you give me the reference? So it's 1 Corinthians, which
Four.
chapter, which verse?
4:1.
Chapter 4, verse 1. Okay, let me
And
just have
I
a
can
look at
see
that.
you. I don't see you anymore.
You can't see me anymore. Hang on. Sometimes the camera cuts. So
Mm-hmm.
I just need to cut the camera on my side because it was like it was indicated that it was still on my side. And then when I reactivate the camera, normally you should be able to see me again. Can you see me again, Sil?
Yes.
You
Uh-huh.
can.
But look,
That's
we
good.
are almost out of time. You don't need,
Yes.
just tell me about the verb regard.
Regard,
Regard as
yes. This
consider.
then is how you ought to regard us. Well, I think a synonym would be consider. This is how you should consider us, you see, because
And
it's regarding not in the sense as looking at, but appreciating, you see, in a
mhm,
sense of
mhm.
considering. Um, that's the opinion you should have of us, the impression
And could
you
I
should
use
have of
this
us.
in my speech, in my daily routine with some friends?
Of course. Um,
Course.
you could say to your friends, well, these people, they regard us, in a very particular way. Or you could
Uh-huh.
say, these other people, they have a very high
Mm-hmm.
regard for us, or they regard us
Good.
very highly. So it's the
Mm-hmm.
way people consider you, the impression they have of you, the opinion they have of you. That's the way they regard you, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
Did that answer your question, Sil?
absolutely, as always.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, I'm so happy, Sil. That's brilliant. Excellent.
Same here. I'm very happy. It was very nice, our class. Thank you so
That's great.
much.
You're ever so welcome, Sil. With the greatest of pleasure. And I look forward then to our next lesson together next time. That'll be great.
Same
Well,
here.
wonderful.
Take care. See you
You
later. See you
too.
very
Take
soon.
care. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye
Thank
bye,
you.
Sil. Thanks. Bye bye.